I'd like to welcome everybody to the Berwick Planning Board regular meeting for Thursday, April 19th, 2018. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Planning Board members present tonight: alternate Sean Winstead, regular David Dow, Niles Shore, the Vice Chair Paul Bovair. Absent is regular member Nicole Fecto and alternate Mike LaRue. So tonight Sean is a voting member. We also have our town planner here, and we also have our planning technician for the town of Berwick. That's all it is now.
Yeah, right.
So sorry, we'll think of another title for you. I've got 2 weeks. Seeing that there's no public here this evening, we will not have a public comment session. Moving on to the approval of minutes for the April 5th meeting. Do you have anything?
No, well done.
Okay, motion would be for approval of the minutes as is.
I will make the motion that we approve them as written.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hands. That's 5-0. New business, planning board needs. We need a lot.
Sure.
The town manager asked me to meet with the town planner and James, and then Niles came in. Just some of the comments the comments that I had made at that joint meeting that we had with Envision Berwick and with the selectmen, that we were just a little concerned about what we were getting from the town planner. Definitely not Lee J. We're getting tremendous support from him, but just kind of a little bit more of what Steve is thinking. It's not in the budget this time of year. I understand that. Ultimately, what his goal is, he's looking at when Kathy comes back from her year sabbatical, partnering up with the town of South Berwick to have a town planner that provides for South Berwick and Berwick. That's not going to happen this year, but Lee J and gave us a better understanding of the support that we're going to get, which is going to be what we've been getting so far. Now, James no longer has any other collateral duties. He works solely for the planning office, so he's going to be that person on the ground. But I did tell...
No more water department billing clerk?
No, they hired someone for that. But I did tell Steve that there might be sometimes when we have a big project comes in, i.e. Fund of Jupiter project, and that we get to something that's way technically out of our league, we might just stop, just stop what we're doing and table that until we get much more further technical assistance, and he understands that. It might be moving painstakingly slow on some things because of the capacity that we have with having a part-time planner and a part-time planning tech. So I just wanted him to know that. And Paul said essentially the same thing, where we don't have to rush on things at all. On the flip side of that, I did say there was a couple applications that came through, and I knew it was the time between when Kathy was leaving and all that we had incomplete packets, and we had made, for example, like White Birch wait. He was getting a little frustrated, but we didn't have complete things. So, James I want to just make sure that we follow everything to the T. Like if there's something that has to go to the fire chief has to do a letter. It just has to happen. Like no more like this email, like, yep, looks good to me. It just has to happen, especially with bigger projects going on in town. So, Niles.
Well, I'm not sure I agree that we can take things slowly. And I'll talk about 2 examples of things that have come up recently. Right? Obviously, across the street, there are other forces that may happen that will make us be in a position to act. And the other one is the whole question of marijuana. I mean, the laws are flying back and forth. We've got two different packets of laws with lots of changes, as I understand. People are going to start applying for conditional use, and are we in a position to respond? I mean, we did the moratorium with the idea that we would then turn around and do something. Well, we're getting near do something time. That means that not only do we need planning assistance, we're going to need lawyer assistance. I don't see it.
Well,
We're gonna get
think
that
I mean,
lawyer
I will
assistance.
say, you know, and I've said this before, but I will say it again. The planners that we've been given, the quality of their work has been exemplary. The question is the quantity, the number of, we need more hours. I mean, those are just two big things that we're gonna need technical assistance on, and I don't see it happening.
We're not gonna change the budget this year for getting a planner. And I think there's nothing we can do about it. But I think in retrospect, we should look back over the last couple of years that not having a planner sometimes actually costs the town money, especially when you end up paying lawyers instead.
I don't understand how
Well,
budgeting goes in the town of Berwick. So explain to me how somebody puts together a budget for the planning board and doesn't ask the planning board what its needs are? Is this the way it's done, and if so, why?
I think it's based on a track record of how much money we've received over the years, and they just kind of continue it. But we're on the verge of a waterfall across the street. At some point here, it's going to start. And I told Dave and other people, I mean, I'm just hesitant to, or apprehensive that we're going to be under fire, you know, for quickness and for responsiveness and.
You know,
Well, if
and-
somebody
and
comes to the planning board with a complete package at some point, how do you
We
put,
have to
how do you
respond
put
to
them
what
off?
we've done, and if we
Yeah,
haven't
you
done-
can't,
if we
you
haven't
can't put
had the
somebody off if they
assistance
have
to
all their
update
ducks in a
things,
row,
they're
you
gonna
know?
get what they get.
Well, we can always put it off until we get our questions answered.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, if I may just jump in for a second, because I certainly hear your concerns, but what I do want you to be aware of is that, especially if you get a big project that comes in and it needs attention, just because I'm not in the office here or at the meeting here, although I'll be at every meeting for you, that doesn't mean stuff isn't getting done back at my shop. That doesn't mean I'm not reviewing an application for you and I'm putting the memos together. You will get that time. I just won't be sitting here to do it. But we have James now who's full-time committed to this position here, so he's gonna be the eyes and ears on the ground here to communicate with me. But if an application comes in and I have the plans, you can be reassured that part of the process is gonna be continuing to move along.
But that's never been the problem. I mean, I'll talk about short-term, long-term. Individual applications that is sort of the day-to-day work, that's always gotten done. I mean, there may have been a delay here and there, but essentially, that's never been the problem.
Sure.
The problem is all of this other stuff, all of the ordinance changes that we need to make, that we don't have the hours to do. So that means when the project comes in, we may not have the ordinance in the way that we would like to have it. We're then forced to approve it in effect using an outdated ordinance.
I think with the extra 10 hours I have and the fact that I can focus 100% on planning gives me that time to be proactive. And when it comes, what was the marijuana and what was the first one you mentioned as big things that are incoming that we need time for planning and attorneys?
Well, I'll give you three. Across the street,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, even on the issue of residential first floor, as I understand it, we started no residential first floor. We amended to allow residential first floor,
Yep.
but we were gonna have a ratio. Now it's being recommended we go back to no residential first floor. And that's just one little piece of what's going on across the street. But the other one that we talked about the last time, the whole question of design standards and form-based codes. And then I'll give you another one. In this lovely book that Lee J's organization gave us,
Yep.
on page 133, section 4360, rate of growth ordinances. A municipality that enacts a rate of growth ordinance shall review and update the ordinance at least every 3 years. we have rate of growth ordinances, right? How many buildings you can do it in,
Per year.
per year, right?
In
Have we
certain,
reviewed it
certain
every 3
areas.
years? And if we haven't reviewed it every 3 years, is somebody gonna tell us whether or not what we have in here is still valid?
You're talking about specifically R3.
Yeah.
Well, R3 and
And R2
lesser
has
R2.
one, you know. So we can review it, Niles, and not change it
But
though.
we haven't reviewed it, so does that mean that if somebody comes in and says, sorry, I'm not paying attention, are we in a bind? I don't know the answer. I mean, some of these things, if you don't do it, you know, it's like not nice, but it doesn't mean that what you have is invalid.
So
But sometimes it is invalid. I would like an answer as
we
to
should
Then
whether
address
let's
that.
write this,
our
then
rate
let's
of
put
growth
this,
ordinance is still good or not.
then let's write this on this running list that's gonna be part of old business every meeting.
We're gonna fill up James' extra 5 hours here with 10 hours worth of work.
So, actually, James and I spoke a little bit about that very issue, the rate of growth issue, a little while ago. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna get all the building permit information together. I don't know how far back we have to go, but we do have to go back to a point in time and look at how many residential permits have been issued on a yearly basis, you know, what the ups and downs have been to get us to
Which I have that already.
which he's got already. And then we can do the analysis to determine what your new number of permits would be. That's on the table, that's not gonna take a long time. We can get that together and give you the numbers, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna get more complex than that, because we do want some growth, and we want it right here
Right.
in our new, you know,
So-
12-acre parcel downtown.
So, one of the things, let's talk about that a little bit, because I still don't know you folks that well from a policy standpoint and what you want to achieve. One of the things I did a few years back when I was assisting South Berwick was they were struggling with, do we keep a growth permit ordinance or not? And there was a real sense of some people wanting to keep it, and we're talking planning board members and select board members, and others not wanting to keep it. And what I did was I came up with a compromise for them, and we built the growth permit around that. And that is that in areas where there is sewer in town, we would not issue growth permits because they were on, it's just an idea. I mean, I can do anything. But wherever there was sewer, we did not issue growth permits because they had the infrastructure and capacity to handle development. In the rural areas where you don't want to see a lot of growth, we kept the growth permits and limited it to, I want to say like it was 23 permits a year. So there are different things you can do depending on where you want to head in town. And what we did there was, if you're on sewer, no growth permits. If you're going to try to build in the rural areas where, you know, infrastructure is more costly, roads are more costly to maintain, and there's no sewer and water available, you're only getting a certain amount a year.
And that kind of reflects this, what we've done here. It's not quite the way
The
you.
ordinance already does.
Yeah, I think our ordinance does that. In
Yep.
R3,
Yep.
you know, you can, the small developers can put 3 lots per year for
Sure.
a project.
Sure.
And R2, I think, is one of the places that we've identified that we have an issue, because R2 is big, and some of it has sewer, some of it doesn't have sewer. And, you know, we think we probably ought to grade that out with a little more granularity. And so I think we are reviewing it now to some degree. I mean, we are thinking about it.
And that's, I just want to make sure we're doing it to the degree that the law requires us to do it, so it remains valid. That's my concern, is that we're enforcing ordinances that are still legally valid.
Sure. Absolutely.
Would you be able to work on design standards, taking what Mike Lassel's provided?
I have an email to him, and there's part of the document that was, or they had worked on, but they pulled out. And I think he's gonna get back to me.
I mean,
Get back to me.
do we have somebody's budget that can hire him for whatever number of hours we need from him?
I don't know quite yet. Lee J, what do we need for design, to have design standards? So we're specifically talking about the building materials, on the, the building materials, what else would you want to see in the design standards?
Signage probably. We have stores,
Yeah,
store
signage
signage.
probably.
Lighting, facades,
So
yeah.
we have lighting already, and it's pretty vague, where it just says it has to be the gooseneck, and it needs to have, like, the ability to have the decorative hangings on it. That's what that says, and it has to look, it has to be uniform in the downtown. So and then we have a sign ordinance in the land use ordinance, but you want something above and beyond.
You know, I look at like, you look at like Portsmouth, what they have in their, you know, in the town center, you know, you're not looking at neon signs and that types of things. You're looking at, you know, signs that hang from a building that, you know, that style. I think you sort of have to dictate a style of sign that you want.
And then, so there's the building facades, so what are some things you don't wanna see for building facades? Or what is stuff that the planning board would encourage seeing for facades?
I'm actually afraid to tackle something like that, because you may never get it right the first time, and you may be locked into doing something that,
But what is something you overtly would say that's terrible across the street? What's something that?
well, how do you define terrible?
Well, I think you wanna have a
That's-
traditional brick facade.
New England style.
Style brick
building.
facade.
Yep.
And we had mentioned that in the form-based code, you know, that we wanted, I think the word tradition actually shows up.
Yeah, I know in the form-based code, I know we have the, like, percentage or something to do with the amount of glass that can be in the front of the building, that sort of thing.
But I mean, what else goes into designs, what else above and beyond that? Cause it doesn't seem like we need to
You're gonna be
hire anybody else
restricting,
to add those pieces. I mean, if we get,
but when you have design codes, if we don't get it right, are you restricting things that may be very good?
Off the jump, I think like with signs, I just think backlighted signs, you know, signs that have lights inside of them, those are now good. If you have building lights, they have to be down, you know, down, what do you call it?
Dark sky compliant.
Dark sky compliant. Not to get off topic subject here, but have you noticed Spencer Matthews' brand new lights outside at night?
no,
I haven't been down there at night, no.
nice?
It lights up the entire downtown Berwick. They're like out. They're halogens or LEDs, but they're not facing down. They're like
Is it
out
lighting
off
their-
the side of the
their
building.
side parking lot?
Oh, it's lighting the whole building.
So.
It's not facing the building, the lights are not focused on the building.
No, it's on the side of the building and it's just out.
Facing out.
There's a couple of things that, what we can do is Portsmouth zoning code, which was being written while I was working there. I did 2-year stint in Portsmouth. We can grab that and show you some of the standards that they have in there regarding signage signage became quite an interesting conversation because LED lighting was coming into effect at the time. And the question was, is an LED lit sign a backlit sign or is it an exposed bulb? So there's numbers of issues to deal with. Anyway, that's minor details that we dealt with down there. We can pull some of that. Buxton actually has like a 60-page design review book that they developed up in their community. Kittery has a series of design standards. A lot of it is around photos that you want something to emulate, not it has to be built like this, but we'd like it to, you know, have some of these standards in them. We can pull some of that together and, you know, I think in a workshop setting, talk about what you guys like, what you don't like. This is not recreating the wheel. This is just pulling stuff from other communities that have already done this and done their homework for us and trying to pull something together. Do you want parking in the back of buildings rather than the front? Some communities have started to do that.
We've done that,
Yeah. Do you know, how much landscaping are you wanting in your parking lots? But when it comes to buildings, there's plenty of stuff out there. I can pull a couple of those things together for you.
And we have an overlay district,
Yep.
very limited in size, basically prime tanning and a little bit of other stuff around
Correct.
it.
Yeah.
So I think we can, I'm hesitant to go full blast into this. But like starting with lighting, it's not a bad place to start, because I think we're just talking about it now and you're getting some thoughts on how to do it.
Right.
But I think we could experiment there a little bit.
Yep.
But it still means, once you put it in the ordinance, it's there for, a period of time before, if you make a mistake, you're gonna have to change it.
Well, one of the things to consider doing as we get ourselves into that is maybe in the ordinance, and you do have a section that talks a little bit about design standards, is that we can put some wording in there that just suggests that they look at the design standard booklet for recommended designs, and excuse me, and we create a book with pictures. It might be 10 pages, might be 20 pages, might be 100 pages, who knows? With pictures, depending on lighting, depending on parking, depending on the building styles, and just, give that to them as a guide, so that whoever the developer is knows that this is what you're trying to achieve down here. And then requiring them to submit architectural renderings of what they're gonna build, so that they don't say, well, yes, we're gonna do something like this picture here. No, you're gonna give us an architectural rendering of what you're building so that we can look at it and comment on it.
So would this apply only to the downtown? Would it
Wherever
apply
you want it
to
to apply.
residential or commercial? Probably
Wherever we
commercial.
want it.
Don't usually apply it to single-family residential.
Village overlay district, that's
it's
what
usually-
section
yeah.
6.4 is.
I mean, it's usually in a commercial area, even if it's accommodating residential cluster or townhouses or anything like that. So, I mean, that's a decision you folks will wanna talk about, is where do we wanna put these requirements, but this is not rocket science, this
So
is
you could
something we
apply
can-
this judiciously when you start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the overview of section 6.4, did you send that out to everybody? 6.4 meaning bringing back the new construction 4-to-1 ratio of commercial to residential.
So that's on page, like, tab 4, I think, on the.
I think you just emailed it to me and said, is this what you were talking about?
Yeah, it's on tab 4 in the binders, I think. Either 3 or 4. Maybe it's 4.
Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, Legia and I, we talked about it for about an hour today.
Yeah,
Maybe we want to do all first floor residential with frontage on Main Street and School Street.
yeah, that was one of the flaws, it's in the ordinance now, the only change we made was under the last piece where we dropped back in not to exceed a 4-to-1 ratio, which is what we talked about briefly at the last meeting. But I noticed an E, it says residential uses on the first floor of a building shall be maintained in non-conforming structures, F. All first floor residential uses in new buildings with frontage on the new Main Street. There's not a lot of residential development that's gonna happen on
And
that new
I think
Main
I sent back an email and said, me personally, I wouldn't want to see residential first floor on Main Street. I think you can leave that to School Street. I think you can leave that to Wilson and Sullivan. But to have it on your Main Street, it's just, I didn't think that was appropriate.
Yeah.
Agree.
I would almost leave residential just on Wilson and School Street.
Wilson and School.
And keep whatever, if we get the new Main Street and, whatever section of Sullivan is left for development, keep that as commercial on the first. So it kind of gives almost like a downtown. more of a
Yeah.
downtown area.
One of
Either
the-
way, I just think Main
Yeah.
Street, no.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
One of the things to consider is like, if we're putting requirements to do stuff on Main Street, will that basically, would they be incentivized not to build buildings on Main Street? They could build it away from Main Street just to say, well, it's not frontage on the Main Street, so I'm not doing the rest.
Well, they're
We
losing,
have setback rules, so there's only so far they can build off of the main street.
They could build a building like
Within
on
5
School
feet.
Street instead.
Well, I mean, I guess it's humanly possible that somebody would just leave all of Main Street blank. I'm gonna bet that the smart money says it isn't gonna happen that way, but, so,
True.
I mean, I think if there's gonna be a Main Street, somebody's gonna put something there.
especially if it abuts that green space. You know, on the other side of the main street is going to be the green space.
I'm so tired of looking at this.
See, one of the things that we talked about today was, this is a concept plan. We don't know if this is really what's gonna get built. And part of the problem you still have is that the applicant or owner is still gonna come in and re-subdivide those lots. And we don't know what that subdivision plan is even gonna look like. So everything we're doing right now, I don't disagree with where you're headed and what you wanna do, but it's still in theory, and we could end up changing it again because we don't know what the final layout could be.
You may not even have Main Street.
Maybe not, maybe not.
Why can't we just keep the 4-to-1 ratio in there and not, in new construction, and not define it at this point?
And we have the conditional use process that will help us, you know, achieve it.
Do we necessarily have to say bottom, top floor? Can it just be 4-to-1? Just that assurance that there's going to be commercial in new construction as well.
So if we said all residential uses in new buildings shall be, and then boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine.
and if we can always go back and change it. But now that we have the assurance that any builder would come in there and say, hey, all these pre-existing buildings, this is going to be commercial, now I'm just going to build my residential and that's it.
So we can modify that. The F will just say, all residential uses in new buildings shall be, and then we'll go right down through the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Alex,
Yep,
you
and
need
get-
to move the B. So you need to make it shall and then put the B before reviewed and
Oh, yes,
before consistent,
yes.
because it's not gonna work for the last one.
And get rid of the words new Main Street.
Yeah, and get rid of the words New Main Street.
Yes,
like that.
absolutely.
Now I can get some sleep at night.
Put that away, James, 'cause
Any-
somebody's gonna be watching on television
So-
and see that, and they're gonna freak out.
Any other issues?
Yeah, can we get an update for the next meeting, having nothing to do with the downtown necessarily?
Yep,
On where we stand on the marijuana moratorium and the state law and what we have to do and when we have to do it by?
Can we, one sec, just pause for that second. Not to exceed a 4-to-1 ratio, is that bound by anything, or is that the entire village overlay district is what we're talking
That's
about?
only the
This is
village
the only
overlay.
overlay, I think.
But, okay, yeah, for the entire village, which means we're including Estabrook into this ratio. That's the village overlay district too. So we would wanna specify,
Well, except, we don't know, but at the moment, our assumption is Estabrook is not gonna be a new building. That they will
Then-
retrofit the existing building.
Then we define it
This says
as,
all first floor uses in new buildings.
so
then we define it as this, the parcel formerly known as Prime, bounded by Wilson, Sullivan, School, and Sawmill.
yeah, that's what we need. Yeah, let's do that.
Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I was writing the
So-
marijuana issue down.
So that we don't include everything that we don't want it to affect, we say, this will only affect the parcel formerly known as Prime Tanning, bounded by Wilson, School, Sawmill, and Sullivan Street. So it's just that triangle.
That's basically the
Can-
7.5
can we do that?
acres.
Can we do that under our legal authority? Or
I
could
don't
we
see
ask
why
our
not.
lawyer if we can do that?
I don't see why not. You can set, I mean, that is a large enough area that you're not affecting one particular building. You're affecting the redevelopment of an area.
And with form-based, well, technically, we're kind of in a form-based code area here, and I think you can do that when you define the area.
Yep.
It's not spot zoning?
No.
No.
Spot zoning is,
a big
really surrounds the issue of the zone.
Okay.
And what zone are you looking at, so.
So
These are
maybe-
standards.
So maybe at our next meeting, we rewrite that, clean it all up, and then we could just put it in old business, and then we can talk about it and vote on it. Vote on it as, hey, on the next changes to the land use ordinance, this is what we want to put in there, and bam, now we have one thing off of our checklist.
So what we ought to do is, when we go home, we just kind of read it ourselves and come up with, you wanna come up with the language at the next meeting?
No, I
Or
think
do you
we
wanna
just,
have Lee J
I think,
and-
I think
Monday.
with their notes, us just talking out loud, I'm sure he's got a lot of scribbles
agree.
on his paper there. And then we can all look at that, hopefully we have a full board, and then we could say, is everybody in agreements with this? All right, let's adopt this and put this on the
And
November.
we'll only apply it to what we call our clean slate on the 7.5
Yeah.
acres.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got my notes, and that's easy to change.
So put that on old business. And the other thing maybe to put to new business is next meeting that we can talk about is, we were talking about the
How about
R2.
The R2.
The
A and-
R2A, R2B.
Actually have a map, James, that we could put up and have you take a light pen and just, try to figure out, I mean, if you look at R2 right now, we are actually, part of it is actually, should be R1.
So this is going to bring about, for me, a bigger issue. And I'm not looking to open a can of worms because I've still got a lot of research to understand more about Berwick. But you say that, and you probably know, I'm sure you know a lot more about what needs to happen. Is your comprehensive plan supportive of that? Does the plan need to be updated? Does the plan need to be amended? We need to be able to make sure that if we're gonna make a significant change like that, that it's supported
Yeah.
somewhere.
Let me ask if it makes a difference from a
Yep.
legal standpoint, writing an ordinance.
Yep.
If we take R1, leave the line of R1 to R2 right where it is.
Yep.
Leave the line from R2 to R3 just the way it is.
Yep.
But then take R2 and create one new line. It doesn't confuse the other lines. It creates one new line where we have high density in R2 right now, and we have low density that will be growing as it gets closer to the rural areas. Is that a
Provided,
better way to do it? Just leave everything as it is with
Yep.
one new line?
provided there's support in the goals, policies, strategies of either the land use plan or the housing section or
I
something
think
along
a
that
comp
line.
plan probably has that.
If
because
there's
it
supporting
does-
language for that, that's a no-brainer. It can be
When was the
done.
last time the comp plan was redone?
2 years ago.
Well,
Well,
no,
not totally redone.
Yeah,
but-
1991.
When all of it was revisited? How many years? ago?
Same thing that comes up every time, you know?
Yeah.
But how,
So it
how
has
long
been
has it
technically
since-
updated.
Since things like growth rates and zone limits and overall, I mean,
Well-
that was a very narrow, important but very narrow review of
Mm-hmm.
the comp plan. When was the last time we had a complete review of the comp plan? 10
91,
years, 18 years?
1991.
1991.
Mhm.
I gotta think that that doesn't really,
And you know what's really even funny, Niles, that when you take the, 67 was the first one, there was one in the 70s, or somewhere about, and one in 91, and you can see a common denominator right through all of them, that a lot of things just hasn't changed,
I don't
you know?
expect
and
much to
The
change,
big
but-
change is right here.
So,
but we need to review it.
I think I would agree with you, probably from a physical growth standpoint. But what may have changed is looking at what I like to try and do with towns when we do that sort of thing is try to use as much of the same survey instrument that's been used previously to see where the attitude is compared to where the attitude was. And that's going to dictate what your goals, policies, and strategies are, which that may change greatly, even though the inventory pieces may not change.
And the attitude certainly has changed. Like I did a quick straw poll, and
Yeah, I
the
mean,
scale of a 1 to 10, thinking if the future of Berwick is bright or dim, it was at a solid 5 20 years ago. Now it's more like a 7 or 8.
And we've gone from 2,800 in the early 70s to 7,500. That, I mean, and I'm sure the attitudes within those people
Sure,
are different.
sure.
Well, I went from 91 to now, we've doubled, right?
Yes,
take-
yeah.
Anyway, I just raised that. I know that there are other issues and budget issues and that sort of thing, but I just want to make sure if we talk about doing something like that, that we can find some supporting language to do it. I think
Would it
that's
be
very
enough
important.
to say, could you do it from the angle of kids in the school system? Because it says, maintain a equitable tax rate And I believe it says stuff about maintaining the town's population. It might even say something about kids in the school system. Or does
might-
it have to be,
It might be a stretch.
because the comp plans identifies R2 as a growth area,
Mhm.
so further restricting it in R2B.
Well, but there is no R2B
Right.
right now,
Yeah,
correct?
right,
So you're creating an R2B, and depending on what you want that R2B to be, is going to really dictate where are you getting that from? You know, what is driving that? Is there anything supporting that in your plan? But that's a bigger issue. I can look and see if there's something that we can make connect.
But
to that.
also, you pointed to, we could amend maybe pieces,
You can amend the plan, sure.
which might be a short-term fix to amend certain pieces in our comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also looking at, with Rec Master Plan and our age-friendly committee, from the beginning, we've had the intention of adopting those as part of our comprehensive plan.
That would be a smart thing to do.
So if we're touching the comp plan, we might be able to amend it
Good thought.
Yep.
at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, so when you get all the
Mm-hmm.
the sub pieces prepared and ready, then you just include those at the same time and do it once.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome our new code enforcement officer who's joining us here. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Not at all. My name's Mark Ehrenberg. And I've been lucky enough
Here.
to be associated with the town of Berwick now for about 4 weeks on a
Welcome.
full-time basis. But it's an exciting city, exciting town, and there's a lot going on and a lot of challenges, and there's nothing I'd like more than a challenge. So,
Welcome to the challenge.
thank you.
Do you have Hawaiian shirts?
Do I have Hawaiian shirts?
Yeah.
I don't.
Do you know
I haven't
Joe?
Yeah,
qualified.
you're gonna
You do
need
know
some
Joe?
fashion tips
Oh,
from
yes.
Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I haven't qualified to wear a Hawaiian shirt to
Yeah.
work yet. So
Yeah.
it's coming. It'll get there.
Yeah.
Believe me.
But you can
Sure.
do your own thing anyway. They don't have to be Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Oh, really? It could be like
Yeah, pick a
Tahitian or
state,
something?
Nebraska, any state you like, is perfectly fine with it.
Lovely.
Are you working with the water department too?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Well, indirectly, I have experience in the design and treatment of water treatment systems, as well as sewage systems. So I offered my services to Chris when he feels he needs it, and another set of eyes never really hurts, at times, but, I enjoy that work. It's where my background is. I've got a master's degree in civil engineering and in water treatment technology, so it's right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's key. That civil engineering certification will definitely help us here too. So.
Did I do
Welcome
okay?
aboard.
Well, thank you very much. I've got a
Thank you.
pretty decent engagement, but
All right.
if you need me, please.
We'll know where to find you.
Yeah, you know where to get me.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about tonight? I think we have a good I
Enough.
think we have a good list here.
Did we
Yeah.
talk about the marijuana?
No, but what we do need is, the moratorium is like running out, isn't it? Momentarily.
Also,
Yeah.
remember, we put in the ordinance, although I don't know how much it has legs, but we X'd out everything for retail marijuana until, with an asterisk that said, planning board will review once the state passes whatever they're doing.
Well, the state's passed. Well,
Well, no, but
it's in front of the governor and
It's
it's
gotta
gonna be.
play itself
yes,
out, and you
yes,
probably got a few weeks to play out.
yes.
And then we have until 2019 or 2020 until everything comes into effect.
Well, some of the 5 components, I think, are. been
Some of the
held
5
out.
components are gone, like
Well,
social clubs.
Social clubs is definitely out the door.
And if I heard correctly, when I was watching it on the news, part of but the governor's issue was there was something in it, that there was a tie between medical and recreational somehow
Correct.
within the bill as they were trying to pass it through.
Because there was they restricted number of plants as well.
Okay.
I think what you're going to see is the governor is not going to veto it. He's just going to leave it sitting on his desk, and it's going to become law.
His
That's his silent protest on things.
Yeah,
his
He made
problem was that they're taxed differently.
yeah.
One among many, probably.
I just wanna be sure, like, we don't get a situation like the one facility we have
Yeah,
that
that's what I'm concerned
came
about.
in ahead of our ordinances.
But it's retail, so in our ordinance update that is up for vote in June, retail marijuana is defined, so it can't come under agriculture, can't come under medical marijuana, and the use table, it's all X.
It's all X'd out.
Yeah.
Which, is that allowed, like, if it's legal, you can't really X out everything, unless you.
Sure.
You can or can't,
Ken,
okay.
You can? I
Sure.
thought you had to allow it at least somewhere.
mm-mm.
No.
We might want to look into that again because
Medical marijuana?
We want to,
I've
Or
I've
no, the
written,
recreate, this would be the recreation.
yeah, I've written several, ordinance amendments for several towns, and basically says, recreational marijuana, retail sales, blah, 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 is expressly prohibited in the town of, whatever it may be, and have had
that's
those.
recreational only,
Correct.
yeah.
Are you wanting to eliminate medical?
no.
No, but I mean, I think we only said marijuana. We didn't say one or the other. Just a
No,
minute ago.
it's prohibiting until
We dealt with
the
medical
state gets their act, so the state determines the laws,
Right.
and it's just prohibiting it until the laws are established to avoid a scenario where someone can sneak in under a different definition, which is what
So
happened.
basically what you're doing is you're prohibiting
You're,
it.
you're buying time.
You're prohibiting it, and then you're gonna revisit it at a later date and see if you wanna add it back in as a
so once-
use,
Right,
whether
so
it's the retail sales or the
So
growth.
the first question we need an answer to is how much time do we have if this thing plays out in the next 2 weeks? I mean, if it's a 10-day sit on your desk stuff, it'll be the next.
A year to 2 years.
How much
A
time do
year
we
to
have after that?
a year to 2 years when it goes into when the law
Before they
actually takes
issue
effect.
licenses. But the question I guess I have to,
But that,
did you
but
pass,
there are other issues besides just the issuing of the license.
did you pass a moratorium, or did you actually prohibit?
A moratorium was passed last year, which expires this June.
Right.
This June in the land use ordinance is the prohibition of it.
And so if you're gonna, if it gets passed as a prohibition of it, then you're done. And then if you choose to,
But I thought it's a prohibition
no,
until the state passes.
Correct. There was the
law,
caveat there, and then it would be
we have to
revisited.
we had
reconsider.
wording in there that,
So the
okay,
question is, how much time will we have to reconsider it?
You'll have at
Under
least
the
a
way
year.
that's worded,
you'll have a long time, because
gonna-
once,
yeah.
once it becomes law, then it has to go to, rulemaking. And the department that's going to handle that has to come up with all the rules and the permitting processes and everything before that can be allowed.
could you
Yeah,
just take a look at the language that's coming up for a vote to make sure we're good on that?
absolutely.
Good.
Anything else? Would you like to adjourn?
I just had one informational item. I don't know if anybody else had seen this or not. I know we always have a lot of discussions about sidewalks. And I believe Rochester, there was just a lawsuit filed regarding a development. I think it was a larger development, but their planning board had waived the requirement for sidewalks. And a group of citizens has taken them to court saying that they, wanting the sidewalks in the development.
Hmm.
So
I'll have
I
to
know
look
it's something
into
that we
that.
always talk about and we discuss it, and so it's definitely
I mean,
something to
we
consider.
need to sit down with the Board of Selectmen and come to, or have them come to some decision about sidewalk policy. I mean, but don't forget, hanging in the background of all this is across the street from the subdivision we're now considering, we waived it within the last 2 years, if not even less than that. So how do we turn around now and not waive it, and literally across the street?
Because now we set a precedent.
Yeah, and that's
Well,
the
but-
question, what happened in Rochester was the developer agreed to give a sum of money to the town or the city to fix sidewalks in another location.
And that's what we need to hear from the selectmen and the town manager.
A policy.
Yeah, so it's kind of coming back to bite. I believe it's Rochester, I'm not 100% sure, I think that's what it was. So it's kind of coming back to bite them a little bit.
You know, the big issue is when you have, like the one that you're referring to, that the sidewalks were waived, it was, I think, 3 lots. And putting sidewalks within those lots, which had really no real, you may have had one house on Pine Hill Road and that was it, but somehow it didn't make sense to have sidewalks where you walk down a 200-foot street down to Pine Hill Road. And,
But we also didn't require the sidewalk on Old Pine Hill Road.
no, it would have been just a start and a stop at dead end of both ends. You know, that's why.
I thought we acted correctly then, and I still think that. But the problem is, how do we now turn around and say, never mind, we're changing the rule for you,
That's
based
the
on
issue.
what?
You want
Based on
sidewalks,
now,
but
we
you want them to
decided
grow
to just
out.
change the rule because we can?
Or you
Well, do we look at the size of the subdivision? Is it major versus minor subdivision?
and you
What is that
formalize a sidewalk plan.
with on Old Pine Hill itself?
Yeah.
We do have an inventory of places for sidewalks, right, James?
Yes, we have an inventory. It'd be up to us to formalize a sidewalk plan. And I can work on that. I can work
Yeah,
on.
I think that's what we're saying.
Yes.
We need some direction from.
Yeah, we need
I can do
direction
that,
as to
absolutely.
what the
Be happy to.
policy is going to be.
I got one more important informational item. Niles, you did a fantastic job with your presentation on the U.S. Constitution, the history behind it, and
Oh, bless your heart.
Maine Constitution. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Nice job, Niles.
Get it on
fact,
BCTV online.
Right, it's on TV.
It's on TV now.
Yeah, they did a great. BCTV did a
And
great
I-
job.
I didn't
And I'll
fall
be
asleep, I
signing
was there.
Copies
It
of
was
the
exciting,
Constitution
yeah.
for anybody who wants to
Oh, yeah.
come to the next planning board meeting.
Just gonna
Free of
add,
charge.
just gonna add your signature to the
Yeah,
bottom.
that's me and Ben Franklin are just.
Have you?
signing the bottom.
Did you see it on BCTV?
No, I was there, so I haven't seen it.
So what they did is while you were talking and you brought up like Article 3 or
I
whatever,
sent them the document so they
and
could.
then they overlaid it on the video. It was really nice.
Yeah, and I
Well,
had,
you know, and I will say thank you very much, and I will say to fellow citizens of Berwick, the US Constitution is an important document. Most of us have never read it from beginning to end. It's all of about 7 pages long. You know, we all have, you know, it's sort of like the Red Sox. We all have opinions even though we don't know anything about it. So it's about time that as a town, we all make a commitment to read the Declaration of Independence and the US Constitution between now and July 4th, so that when we parade down the street, we know what we're talking about.
Are we having a parade?
I listened to a podcast on the Constitution. Is that good enough or no?
Excuse me?
I listened to a podcast on the Constitution.
That works. No, but it really is an important document about what it is that we believe in. You know, and America always goes through a time of change, and the best way to navigate change is remember what it is that you believe in. That will remind us.
Anything else? Adjournment?
something I've never done before. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Say that every meeting.